Hi everyone, I felt like doing a fun book tag today, so I'm going to do the Dilemmas of a Book Nerd tag. And I keep wanting to call it the Confessions of a Book Nerd tag. I don't know why, I just keep wanting to say that. So this was originally created by Lindsay. I'll put a link down below to her original video. And the reason why I like this tag so much, and I've watched a number of people do it, it's been doing the rounds, and is because a number of the prompts and questions are things that I related to so much. And so you know you're a real book nerd when you get finicky about things like this and start having anxiety about these issues, which no one outside in the real world cares about these things. But, because we're sort of fanatics about books, we get really anxious and wrapped up in all these issues and think about them a lot, whereas other people don't. So it's really wonderful sort of communal thing to come together and say, like, yes, I feel this too, and have these issues as well. The first dilemma on the tag. I've got my cup of tea here, like a true book nerd. I'm gonna be sipping my tea while going through these dilemmas. Dilemma number 1 is about book storage. How do you store and organize your books? And so I have all my books behind me here. Not all of my books, actually. This is just in my study in my apartment, where I have these big tall bookshelves, and I made a bookshelf tour video last year, actually almost exactly a year ago. I'll link that in the description below if you want to see my full tour of my bookshelves. So I do organize my books in alphabetical order, and I can tell you over the last year and a half since I've done this, this is such a massive pain. I wish I hadn't done this, but which I'm sure everybody knows the reasons why this is such a pain, because unless you don't change your books at all that you keep on your shelves, when you do want to put a new book on the shelf, then you have to move everything over, you have to make room. If there isn't space there, you have to decide something to get rid of. If it's a book of a different length, then you have to get rid of maybe 2 books, or you have to work around how to fit it into your shelves, and it's such a massive pain. And the way I've organized my alphabetical shelves is a bit tricky too, because in these big shelves behind me, like I talked about in my bookshelf tour video, these are Billy bookshelves from IKEA, which I had customized, but they are different sizes. In Billy bookshelves, some of the sizes of those shelves are fixed length, and others you can sort of customize and make how tall or short you want to. And so the shelves on the top, those ones are quite tall, and then the shelves on the bottom are quite short and can only fit paperbacks. So I've had to divide my alphabetized books on the top with hardbacks, alphabetized that way, and then paperbacks, which are alphabetized. And then also in my living room, I have more bookshelves of hardback books on display, and those are alphabetized as well. So sometimes it can be a bit tricky, even though this is supposed to be a system to make it easy to find books. It can be tricky to find a book because it might be alphabetized in one of these 3 different places. And then of course I have another bookshelf just for Joyce Carol Oates, since I'm the biggest Joyce Carol Oates fanatic, and I have multiple shelves devoted just to her books. So there are those all issues. Then I have another sort of little side shelves next to these bigger bookshelves, which I have books on display that I immediately want to read, although some of those books have been there for quite a while, so that system doesn't always completely work. And then I have other shelves in a spare bedroom where I have incoming books, books that I've been sent this year from different publishers who want to have them reviewed. There's books in all different places, and I'll talk more about those books that I'm sent by publishers in a minute. So dilemma number 2 is about tracking. How do you keep track of what you've read and what books you own? And so I don't have any specific system for keeping track of what I own. I mainly just know in my head of what I own, even though I must have thousands of books. I don't know how many books I have, but I pretty much know in my head which ones I have on my shelves here and which I don't. But how do I keep track of what I've read? Well, I know a lot of people use Goodreads, and but I find Goodreads a bit clunky. I mean, I do post partial reviews on Goodreads, but mainly I keep my own book blog, and I've been keeping my own book blog for 6 years, almost 6 years exactly. And one of the big reasons I keep this book blog, other than to have conversations with people who have also read these books, and to have good discussions with them about it, is to keep track of what I've actually read. So I write reviews of almost everything I read on this blog, which is time consuming. But yeah, it helps me keep track of what I thought and felt about books, because as I'm sure you know, a lot of the times a book you've read 2 or 3 years ago, or maybe even sooner, you might have completely forgot the details of it. You might know, like, I liked this book or I didn't like this book, but the details of why get sort of lost in time, in the haziness of our memories. And so this book blog really rejogs my memory. So if I want to go back and think like, oh, what did I really think about this book? I can go read that post and it'll jog my memory a lot more clearly about why I read that. And so it's wonderful to have this catalog. I've been able to remember so much more about what I've read. Dilemma number 3 is borrow. Do you lend out your books? And yeah, to friends who give it back. Sometimes I give books out to friends. With my own partner, it's a bit more tricky because my partner isn't very respectful of the books that I give him to read. So if I'm going to give him a book to read, then I know it's going to probably get beaten up, and because he just sort of jams it in his bag and spills things on it, and that's just sort of his nature. I've like come to terms with that, and I've learned the hard way that I shouldn't give him books that I really want to keep special and keep in good condition, because once I gave him a special signed book that was signed just to me from an author I really love, and he was reading this while waiting for a tube train to come, and he managed to drop this book on the tracks of the train tracks, and and so obviously never retrieved this book, and this special book that I lost, and so yeah, now and I think he's learned like that, if to check with me before borrowing any of these books, like is this a special book that you want to keep and don't want to have messed up? But over time I have got less finicky about wanting to keep books in pristine condition, so most of the time I am happy to lend out any of my books to friends. Dilemma number 4, acquire. How do you acquire your books? And so for me, like as I mentioned already, because I've been running this book blog for 6 years, I've just naturally had contact with a lot of publishers early on when I was requesting books, and then I just sort of got on a bunch of publishers lists. Now I barely ever request books. Just a lot of books are sent to me, and I feel incredibly grateful and lucky to have this, especially from a lot of publishers that I really admire and like, and generally the things that they put out are books that I really enjoy and want to read anyway. So yeah, I am sent a lot of books, and the majority of the books that I get are kindly sent to me. But this does make a dilemma, because I worry sometimes, am I only reading books that marketing departments sort of send me, and so is that steering and focusing my reading? And because of course sometimes I do still buy books. If I really want to read a book, I'll just buy it anyway. I mean, sometimes on a rare occasion I will still request it from the publisher, but sometimes I'll just go buy a book, because I still love the pleasure of going to a bookshop and buying a book, because yeah, that's such a wonderful thing to do. And so even just recently with the Booker Prize, I followed the Booker Prize so closely, but I bought my own copies of Ducks Newburyport and bought my own copies of Girl, Woman, Other. So I do still steer my own reading in that way. If I want to read a book, I'll just buy it and read it. But like I said, a lot of the time these are publishers that I really enjoy the stuff that they put out, so I'll naturally enjoy reading their books anyway. So yeah, that's a really lovely thing. Dilemma number 5, comments. How do you respond to the "how do you read so much" comment or similar comments? And and I've talked about this before and made a whole video about it before, called "How I Read So Much," and I'll link that in the description below too, because yeah, this is a question I get asked more than any other question when people learn that I have a book blog and a book video channel and all that stuff, of like, how do you read so much? And yeah, and I love Lindsay's answer to this when she was like, well, it depends on the tone of how they ask it, and that's so true because some people will ask it of like, oh, how can you be neglecting so many things in your life to read so much? And then other people will be generally curious and will want to read more themselves, and so be asking it in that way. And and like I said in that video, I response I made about it, I just it's there's no magic formula to it. I wish I could just wave a magic wand and say like, here's how you can read 100 books in a month. It's just committing to it and spending the time and trying to fit it reading into all the nooks and crannies of extra time you have just as you're going about your normal day. So when other people feel a compulsion to go online or check social media, then just pick up a book instead, or always have an e-reader with you for ease, or audiobooks on your whatever device you have to fit in some reading time in all those in between times during your day. So that's the answer I'll give most often. But if I'm feeling in a funny mood, I'll just say, well, I never sleep and I just read all night long, which obviously isn't true. I mean, I do have sleep problems sometimes, and I do read in the middle of the night sometimes. Mostly it's just in those in-between times during the day. So question number 6, next book. How do you pick what you read next? And this is a question I get asked most often when I go to sort of book events, because quite often like a publicist or somebody from a publisher will come up and be like, how do you decide what to read next? And it'll be a sort of loaded question because they'll want to know, like, how do I get my book into your hands that you'll review and talk about before any other books? And my answer, I think, is probably the answer that a lot of people give. It's a whole mixture of things that make me decide what to read next. I mean, sometimes it'll be of an author that I've read before and that I'm really looking forward to their new book. Obviously like Joyce Carol Oates or Ali Smith or someone. Although I still haven't read Ali Smith's new book, Spring, which was published this year, so that's not always a guarantee. And yeah, or sometimes it's a book that I've heard a lot about on booktube or have been recommended by personal friends who've said that this is a book that they think I'll really enjoy. Sometimes it's a book that's listed for a prize. Like I said, I follow the Booker Prize and a lot of book prizes. So I'll try to read the list of that prize. Sometimes it'll be just a really good description of the book that I think is a theme and a subject that I'll really connect with. And sometimes it's for that shallow reason of just having a really beautiful cover and a really striking cover, something that just stands out to me and says like, oh yeah, I want to read that. We can be shallow as well. Dilemma number 7, travel. How do you pick what book or books you bring on vacation with you? And so yeah, like any big book nerd who goes on holiday, I get most excited when packing about what books I'm going to bring with me. And I do always try to theme my reading about where I'm going. So I'll buy new books to sort of fit with that theme. So when a few months ago I went to Portugal, I bought some books by Jose Saramago and an anthology of short stories written by Portuguese female authors that Britta Bowler suggested to me. So yeah, I think it is fun to try to theme your reading if you are going to a particular place, to read authors from that place or popular literature about or surrounding that place. So I do try to do that, but then then I just also try to pack in books that I've been wanting to get to and wanting to read. And I it's not usually just sort of like, I don't understand what beach reads means really. So it's normally just books that I've been wanting to read anyway. I don't try to pick like easy books or think of as just like fun in some way. I mean, I always just enjoy what I read anyway, regardless of the subject matter. So yeah, there's that. But I did learn my lesson recently when I went and I brought way too many physical books, and I had to pay an extra luggage cost coming back because of more books I brought in this place I went to. And I really resented that because I think I had to pay like £40 or something, and that just seemed ridiculous because it's like, oh, this is money I could have spent on more books, but instead I paid a luggage cost. And obviously I'll bring like a dozen books with me and only end up reading 1 or 2 if that, because I'm busy seeing things on these holidays I go on. And so Yeah, there's so I try not to do that anymore, and I try to just put more books on my e-reader that I want to read, or audiobooks that I've been meaning to get to. So dilemma 8, annotate. Do you write or highlight or mark up your books in any way? And like I said, I'm not as precious about keeping my books as pristine as I once was, but I still have that thing. I can't write or highlight or put any marks really in a book that I'm reading. It feels like too much of a violation. I know I should just get over it, particularly because sometimes I'm sent proofs or advanced copies or galleys of books, and these books are meant to be disposable. You're meant to write in them, but I can't bring myself to do it. I just can't. It feels too much like a violation. And so like when I made a video with Anna James, she always writes all in her books, and I'm just that horrifies me. I'm just like, oh, how can you do that to your books? And I know it's silly, and I should just get over it. But yeah, that's the way I am. So I keep notes on my computer, or I write them in my phone. I copy out quotes in my phone, or particular ideas I have about books. Particularly because I write these reviews on my book blog about them. I want to make notes about them, but I don't do it in the book. I do it, yeah, on some other device, or writing in a notebook or something like that instead. So dilemma number 9, new or backlist. Which do you prefer, new releases or backlisted books? And yeah, for me, pretty much it is all new releases, and and this is partly because I'm sent so many books, and I get so excited about new books that are coming out. I mean, I've always got really excited about new books that are coming out, and bought books as soon as they come out. I did this, before I had a book blog and was being sent books, so it's not just because I'm being sent all these books that I just mainly read new books. And I do worry sometimes that I don't read as many backlisted books as I want to or should, or as many classic books as I should. And so I try to participate in readathons or challenges that'll encourage me to read more older books. And so actually Booktober is coming up, and so I think I will participate in that, because I'd like to read some more Victorian literature. So that's a good challenge that's coming up. So finally, dilemma number 10, sequels. Do you read books as they are released, or wait for an entire series to be published before reading one book? This isn't so much an issue for me because I mainly read new literary fiction, and there's not as many sequels in literary fiction. Although, obviously there's this is sort of the year of literary sequels. So I just made a video about Margaret Atwood's new sequel to The Handmaid's Tale, and then Olive Kitteridge, Elizabeth Strout. She has her secret sequel coming up to Olive Kitteridge called Olive Again, and I'm so excited to read that. And then also it was just announced that Hilary Mantel has the third book in her trilogy about Thomas Cromwell going to be published early next year. And this is a series I want to catch up with, because I tried reading Wolf Hall. The very beginning of Wolf Hall I loved, and then as I got into it, I got confused about the politics, because I don't know much about that time period. Although, when the talk I went to recently with Margaret Atwood, and she was talking about Thomas Cromwell a lot, and she said a new biography of Thomas Cromwell was published last year. So my plan is, this is a very ambitious plan. I don't know if I'm actually going to get to it, but my plan is to read this biography about Thomas Cromwell, and then go back to book 1 of Wolf Hall, read Wolf Hall, and then read Bringing Up the Bodies, hopefully before the publication of Hilary Mantel's third book early next year. That's my big grand plan. We'll see if I actually get to it, but yeah, that's something I want to do. So those are all the dilemmas, and yeah, that was really fun. And like I said, a lot of other people have been doing this book tag, so I'm sure you've seen that, and we'll see links to other people's that have been doing this. But if you haven't done this tag and want to do it, please record a video about it and let me know if you do, or if you just want to answer the questions or respond to any of these topics in the comments below, then we can have a good old book nerdy discussion about it. So I'll speak to you again soon, and happy reading, everyone. Bye. That sounded really sarcastic, didn't it? But I really meant it. Happy reading, everyone. See if I can do it more sincerely. Happy reading, everyone. No, that sounds too enthusiastic. I don't know. I'm gonna go now. Bye, everyone.